Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Today we're going to do it. We are going to set the record straight when it comes to liberals. And that's by way of this gentleman who wrote the book. It's called The Liberal Record and How Liberals Change the World. Apparently, there's some confusion as to what a liberal is and what their beliefs and values are. So we're going to start there and then drill into other aspects of the book, which is based on 3 years of fact-finding in terms of liberals and what they have done and what has transpired with liberals historically in our political system. Marcelo Brazzi is the author of that book. He's back with us. Marcelo, welcome. How you doing?
Doing great, Steve. How are you doing?
Doing very well. And yeah, I think it's time to, the book is called The Liberal Record, to set the record straight as to what a liberal is. I just say this, I don't do politics. I'm not affiliating with any party, but I can say for sure that I'll hear conversations of people talking about liberalism, and it's all confusing. And I think they're confused even in terms of trying to present that. Do you see the same thing?
Well, yeah, that's really what you just said is the primary motivation for writing this book. By the way, I am a registered independent. I voted for both parties or either party along the way. So I'm not a hardcore, liberal, my way or the highway type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, if I would like to, explain or go into the details of exactly, and this is things that I consider is important because very few people, the general public, are aware of this stuff. There are very few people understand this. All they know is what they heard on 6 o'clock news or something. And that's the end of it. So let me first of all start out by just reading, this is in the book, the definition of what a liberal is. This is a dictionary definition, and the point is that the word liberal means the same thing in any language, in any point in time. It means the same 100 years ago as it's 100 years from now. A liberal is a description of what they are. And here's a dictionary description. Liberal definition: favorable to progress and reform, advocating freedom of individual rights and liberties, individual freedom guaranteed by law and government protection, representative type of government, not kings or dictators or despots, free from prejudice and bigotry. It goes on a little bit, but those are kind of the highlights of the what liberals are. I'd like to go through first of all some of the early history, and then some of the current history or recent history, and then some of the current history, just so that your listeners can follow through how we ever got to where we are now. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of confusion about that. And it's kind of surprised me, really, actually. But first of all, you go back, and as the title says, how liberals change the world. And this change was initiated back in 1440 when Gutenberg invented printing. Prior to that, the world, people lived on farms and they didn't know who the heck lives on the farm down the road. So the printing really kind of changed the whole public information and knowledge of everything, governments and science and religion, everything, That was in 1440. And that started the kind of over time, a few hundred years, of the migration of almost all the governments from the past type of government of kings and slaves and dictators and that whole thing. Now to today, we have pretty much nearly every country is a representative government. People are voting. I mean, you go to Germany, Australia, Brazil, wherever you go, there people vote for their representatives now. Before, that's not the way the world was. So the movement is towards, and it keeps moving more and more that you can slow it down, but you can't stop it, from a very conservative autocratic government to government by the people and liberties and freedom. That's where we've come to already. I like to go into a little bit of history of the Republicans and Democratic parties. This is something I learned, and I wasn't aware of it, and I'm sure 99% of the people are not aware of this. But the Republican Party was started in 1854, around Lincoln's time. He was part of it. And it was a extreme Republican Party founded. It was extremely liberal at that time party. The Republican Party was founded primarily to get rid of slavery. I mean, the slavery was a big issue, of course, and they didn't seem to be anybody who's really focused on that issue. So they started the Republican Party, 1854, and Lincoln was part of it, and he became president. And they all worked towards the ending of slavery. And we all know about the Civil War and that. But slowly over time, and this is where it gets confusing, and I probably will not be able to clarify this completely, but the parties gradually switched over time. Today, the Republicans, which started out as a very liberal party, now it's a very conservative party. And the Democrats, at that time, over the years, there was two kinds of Democrats. There's the Democrats in the North, which are generally more liberal or independent type. But there were Democrats in the South that resented the early Republicans freeing the slaves. So there was Democrats in the South. And I'm sorry for the confusion here, but that's, I don't know. We gotta cover it. The Democrats in the South were called Dixiecrats, and the Dixiecrats were extreme conservatives, and they were, well, I might as well call it what it is. They were racist. So there was a lot of confusion. And today, sometimes when Republicans are trying to denigrate the Democrats, they say, "Oh yeah, the Democrats were in the Ku Klux Klan," and well, yeah, Democrats were, but they were not the liberals. That's the point. But then the South pretty much became conservative Republican. A big part of that was the Richard Nixon's Southern campaign policies. They went after the South when Richard Nixon was running. So that's kind of a mixed history. I'm sorry for the confusion of how these parties switched, and it's a mixed history. But I think people should be aware of it. Anyway, that brings us up to the recent era, and in the recent era, after World War II. People were shocked at how the German people bought into the whole Nazi program. I mean, they said, "Oh, well, that's crazy. How can these people buy into all that, racism and anti-Jewish?" And they had the Germans are publishing videos of Polish people who were monsters. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos. They were passing out these. And this is all part of building up this big propaganda that, and people, they didn't know any better. So, oh, yeah, okay, whatever, And so there's some of those, propaganda things were just, they got people to think if you were Polish or Jewish or whatever. So it was a big propaganda thing. And so when, after the war, United States, we were concerned about that. I said, well, if it happened someplace else, it could happen here. I mean, people are just people, they react to the same things all the time. So they passed a law called the Fairness in Media Law. This Fairness in Media Law required that anybody who came along with these radical attacks, lies, propaganda, misinformation on somebody attacking a party or person or whatever, they had to allow the other party equal time to make their case and to rebut whatever was being said. That I'm not going to go into the McCarthy case, but that McCarthy case was a great example of how that worked out. McCarthy was attacking, he was saying there were communists around every corner. There were communists under your bed. There were communists in the government, communists in Hollywood, communists, in schools, everything like that. And it turned out 99% of what he said was just all made up baloney. Anyway, the other people he was attacking got their equal time on the media, and eventually McCarthy was exposed as being a big fraud, and he got kicked out of the Senate, and a couple of years after he was kicked out, he died of lung cancer from smoking. But anyway, so they had this fairness in media law, which kind of tried to keep things balanced. And when I was growing up, they were balanced. I mean, both parties had different opinions, but
and I want to illustrate your point because you're bringing back memories for me. I've been in the broadcast world literally since I was 17, and
right.
My first full-time job 3 years after doing part-time in radio, news and public service director, big radio station, New York area. And it was fair. You had to give equal time to both. It was, I want to even say FCC guidelines at that time. It needed to be, if we allowed one guest on, we'd have to get the opposing view and give them equal time. Obviously, 2023, not like that anymore. You could have one network that sways in totally one direction, and I guess that's okay. But that's, going back to, the time that I was referencing, you also did 4 hours of public service programming every single week, whereby nowadays, and it could be, early Sunday morning, nowadays you're lucky if you get a half hour, if it's even that. So all deregulation within the broadcast industry has brought us to where we are now.
Yeah, your experience is, I believe, exactly what the fairness in media law was intended to do.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose some companies did it willingly just to be fair, but you couldn't just get out on the airs and just spout all kinds of baloney and conspiracies and lies, and you couldn't do that. But now, what happened in 1987? Reagan was president, and Republicans had control of the Senate and the House. Well, first of all, let me say the Republicans had opposed this ever since it was first passed back in 1949. They were dead set against this from day one. In 1987, they finally got their way, and they repealed that fairness law. The next day, virtually the next day, Rush Limbaugh plugged in his microphone, and the whole world changed. Fox News, pretty soon, Fox News got into the game, and other, Alex Jones and all those other people, they all got on board. But none of that would have happened. And we can get into arguments about, different issues on it. But that basically, bottom line, that's what happened. So now we're in this world, black and white. I mean, God, I can't. It's just so depressing. I have lifelong friends. We played football together. We went to Vegas together. We did all this thing, and now I can't even talk to them.
Just because of the difference of opinion.
Yeah. They sit there all day. They sit there all day long listening to Fox News and all that stuff. And they become so wired in that. Now, my friend, this one in particular, he feels like every time I talk to him, he feels like he's full of anger and hate and resentment. And, he won't listen. This is unbelievable. He will not even watch the NFL football games, which like I said, him and I played football for years. He won't watch the NFL football games. I said, why? What's the problem? I got that Black Lives Matter stuff, and the cops and the people, and all this stuff he's going on. I said, oh my God, give me a break.
I hate to say it, in many regards, it's brainwashing. And I have a friend just like that, and we're all in the same group chat, and he'll start throwing stuff in there that are political. memes and videos and things like that. And I have to I just scroll away. Even though my other friends are in there, it gets to the point. We had to say something a while back, and he's gotten a little bit better at it. But when that stuff pops up, that's not why we're talking together. It's not your political views. We're talking about silly stuff, fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't want to get into it too much, but my friend, my girlfriend said some innocent thing to him, and he went on a rampage about all this stuff, and she just about fell out of the chair.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on to liberal accomplishments. Now that we know, hopefully, some people understand who liberals really are and what's happened and how we got here. That is the whole message, and it's a big part of the book. Not the entire book. There's a lot of other stuff in there, but I think to make the point, I need to highlight some of the things that the liberals have accomplished. First on the list is the unions. Back in the early 20th century, unions were first starting to become popular, and there was a lot of unions. They had strikes, and that's a whole new thing now. This is a whole new thing, strikes by unions. Well, guess what? This is something that's in the book, and people don't know about it. If you were on strike, you were going to get shot by the police and the Secret Service, or not the Pennington, or what I forget what they're called, another agency. They would shoot you, and there were a lot of people that were shot, and I documented all this in the book. Well, I'm not saying they shot hundreds of people, no, but they shot 2 or 3 here and there and whatever, because they were because they were on strike. Yeah. You get, couldn't believe it. So anyway, the public finally got a little bit upset with that. They said, "Oh, that's not right," and they finally backed off on that. And the unions started to grow. And the unions, a lot of people can knock the unions, but I'll tell you what, it's a matter of fact. America, when they say "Make America Great Again," they're talking about the days back when the unions had good wages, and a union worker, you could send his kids to college, you could buy a house. Now you got to have 2 people working. It's a whole different world now. But I'm just saying, the unions have accomplished a lot. They accomplished 40-hour work weeks. They cover time off, maternity leave, equal rights for different races and genders. So this is a big change has went on. A couple of others here. Women voting. Liberals were behind women voting when it first came up. The liberals ended prohibition. We had laws against selling liquor, and the liberals got that thrown out. Going way back in history, the Declaration of Independence, that was a liberal movement. Liberals, again, you go back to the definition, they are, they promote freedom from another, a representative government, and liberties, and that's what the Declaration of Independence is all about. They ended slavery. 1957, the Civil Rights Act, Social Security, gay marriages, public schools. That's another one. Public schools. Who would have thought about it? But there were people who were against public schools for a long time, but now we all take it for granted. I mean, well, yeah, you got public schools. You got to have schools, but there were people who were against that because that was, public schools, government sponsored socialism, and okay, right. A lot of this stuff that we've accomplished, I've just rattled off here, the 40-hour work week, Social Security, public schools, all that stuff. Nowadays, it's taken for granted. Nobody would say, "Oh, that's liberal or Republican or that's social." They don't say that now. Now that everybody just takes all that progress that has been made, and it's kind of taken for granted that that's the way the world should be. And even in some cases, on some issues, Republicans have tried to claim credit for it. And say, "Oh, that was that they had accomplished that." So that gives you an idea. Let me just quickly. This is a little point on the side that kind of bugs me. There's a lot of people are attacking Biden. They say, "Oh, he's no man. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't, is not a leader, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Well, it might come as a big shock to a lot of people that he was in office the last 2 years or so. They passed the Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Safer Communities Act, the Respect for Marriage Act, Violence Against Women Act, American Rescue Act, the Chips and Science Act, the Postal Service Reform Act, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that the average American, the average person, you ask him, what is Biden accomplished? Oh, he hasn't done anything. He just, he's an old man, doesn't know what he's doing. We got to have, so anyway, that's kind of.
With the time we have left, just even a part of it, I want, if we could, you to illustrate the research that went into this, because some may say, well, how do you know that? Come on. The school district thing. How do you know that's a liberal thing? Things like that. I don't know if you want to give an example of where you traced it back, where it proves to be something that came from a liberal.
If you study political science, the point is not, people today think Democrats are liberal, Republicans are conservative. Well, it's not that simple. For example, I believe, and I think it's true, that most people, I guess, are fiscally conservative but socially liberal. And I know I consider myself a fiscal conservative. I'm an investor. I've been in investing and stuff like that. I'm a fiscal conservative, but on social issues, I'm a liberal, and that's the way most people are. And the point is that on social issues, if you're in favor of these things I read before about freedom and individual freedoms and advocating rights and all that stuff, and you look at that, and regardless of the party, whether it's Democrat or Republican or whatever, if that issue is a progressive issue, progressive program that qualifies as a liberal program. Like I said, it doesn't matter the party. If you're promoting freedoms and independence and that kind of stuff, that qualifies it as a liberal idea. And as far as the research goes that you mentioned, I didn't just make up this stuff pull it out of the air and say, oh, we're going to believe this and that. I avoid opinions a lot. I try to keep the opinions out of it. I spent 3 years digging through things like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the stock market reports, history, go back to history documentation of the unions. It's all documented. They got names in the book. I named individuals who were shot by the Pinkertons. They shot. I got their names and where they live and everything. But so again, it's, you look at the data. It's all there. It's not. I've got dozens of charts and graphs and tables and statistics and all that stuff in there. As a matter of fact.
I'm sure, Marcello, that there are many people out there that would even drill into that and say, "Oh, Bureau of Labor, yeah, that's controlled by Democrats. Come on, I mean, really, come on. Everybody's going to try and punch a hole through something."
Yeah, time out. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics is there under Republican administrations and under Democratic administrations, so they're there. They don't. When the Democrats get elected or Republicans, they don't take through everybody out and put in all their own people. They might, that's not the way it works. And there's other departments, Homeland Security and transportation and all that. They don't, when a new administration gets elected, they don't throw everybody out and start over with their own people. It's people who are lifetime responsible, and they consider it a serious responsibility to dig up the truth and the facts. And in fact, back to the BLS, industry and commerce, they depend on the BLS numbers for making decisions. If they're going to make some decision on financing a project or not financing it or whatever, or advance.
Sure.
So there's people of any kind of position that they depend on the stock market numbers, the Dow Jones. They depend on the BLS. They depend on all these sources. So it's not it's not just all one-sided.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, of course, there are going to be people out there that will find a way in their mind to try and punch a hole in any kind of facts that come out, no matter what.
Before we leave, can I make just one comment on that?
Sure.
And I mentioned this once before, but that goes back to one of my favorite sayings: "You cannot win an argument with facts." And that's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, you can show these people, black and white numbers, statistics, data, everything, trends, and they just say, "Oh, that's not true. I believe this and that, whatever." Like I mentioned before, the 2020 election, all the polls, 160 polls, plus Fox News, a Republican poll, and they all said Biden was going to win by 51%, and he won by 51%. Now, if there was fraud, there's no way in the world, it's impossible for the polls to have predicted the fraud. Yet these people, you talk to them and they say, "Oh yeah, the polls are flawed."
This is what I'm saying. Exactly right. And I like to say, facts don't lie, people do. But to your point, absolutely, you can't win an argument with facts. I guess we just leave it at that. You can't win an argument. Right. Sometimes that's the way it is.
Let me make one more comment on that. My people have asked me, said, "Was your book intended to convince conservatives that they're wrong or that they should become liberal?" No, I had no intention of trying to convince anybody of anything. All I wanted to do, and it's intended mostly for independents and liberals. That's really my target audience. My target audience, like I said, is independents and liberals, not conservatives, not Republicans. They're welcome to read it, and I wish they would, but they don't, doesn't matter. So it's people are just got their minds made up, and they're not. Some people there are people out there who are a little more open-minded, and
and your former friend from school is not one of them. And mine too. Yeah.
I can't even. I'm almost afraid to say good morning to him. I mean, he'll start arguing about it.
Well, people will skew something any way they want. You could say good morning to him and say, of course it's a good morning if you're a Democrat, whatever it might be. The book is called The Liberal Record. You can find more details at theliberalrecord.com. And it's all about, the subtitle of the book is How Liberals Change the World. Marcelo, thanks for all the insight and your research. And it doesn't matter what party you're affiliated with. It's an eye opener. And take a look at the testimonials or reviews in the book as well. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.